Hello, welcome back to Artsy-Island-Girl. I'm glad you're here. A few weeks ago, Tim Holtz released some Foundry Wax, and I've gotten my order in, and I've played with them for a little bit, and I figured I'd do a little bit of a review and show some of the things that I have created with them. So before this, there was only a few ways to do gold leafing as far as I was aware, or even get that look. So there are leafing pens. I just tried these two. They have gone weird, so I'm not even going to open them because they've gone all oily and I can't shake them up. So the silver one is just basically a silver pen. You pump it like that to get more ink to it. To be honest, I don't use mine very often, and now I just pushed it in to pump it and it's stuck, so I'm not sure if there's any getting that one back. The other way has been using gold leaf flakes or sheets. Now I don't have any sheets on me. I've never used them before. I've used flakes, and actually the only ones that I have right now are variegated flakes. I keep them in a tin because it's impossible to get them back in the package. So the two ways that I have used the gold leaf flakes are with a glue that dries tacky or with a double-sided tape. There's this type of glue that is made exactly for gold leaf. I'm not using this one because, again, I haven't used it in a long time, so that glue has gone clumpy. I typically use it with my Tombow multi-glue because Tombow glue, when you let it dry to a clear dryness, it dries tacky like a post-it note. So it's a perfect solution for this, as well as the fact that you can get it in a smaller area, whereas using something like that, you would need to sacrifice a paintbrush in order to get it in a small line, or a little bit more precise. The other thing you could do with this, though, is you could use a bigger brush and do it in a larger area. So you would take your glue out, you would let it dry till it is clear like this. Let's put this where I'm not going to put something on top of it, and then I'll show you how to do the gold leafing. So I've got my glue and I've got my double-sided tape. This is how I would do it. Obviously I would put it exactly where I wanted them to go. I would put the gold leaf flakes or the sheet or whatever on there, and I have a foam brush that I just leave right with my flakes, and I use it to get all the excess off, and it helps to burnish the gold leaf flakes into the glue. Now I still love using the variegated flakes, variegated especially because it's just got a lot more interest than just gold or silver or copper. The thing though is when you're using them, you can't breathe because these are so light and fluffy. Even just me being over top of them, you can see how quickly they start to move. So you definitely have to be careful when you're using them that way. So then we come to the Foundry Wax. So there's 4 different leafing colors. There is sterling, statue, gilded, and mined. Now you want to make sure that you shake them all up completely before you use them. These 3 here is very easy to hear the ball. This one here is a thicker formulation. It's just made that way, so you can hear the ball, but you just can't hear it quite as much as the other ones. So there's a few ways that you can get them on your surface. You can, you can use a paintbrush. You can use your fingers, which is my favorite way of doing it. So let's put it on something. So I'm going to use the silver here, the sterling. Squeeze a tiny little bit onto your surface here. Oops. And if you squeeze it a bit too much, or if the tip is a little bit clogged, that's what happens. So you can use your finger to spread it on, or you can use a brush, paint it on, or you can paint it on an object. Now it doesn't look very fantastic when you're just putting it on the object. The way to make it look beautiful is by hitting it with a heat tool, and the heat from that heat tool brings the leafing to the surface. Kind of like magic. If you're familiar with embossing powder, it's very similar to that And by that I mean you can see the change happen. It happens much quicker with the Foundry Wax than it does with the embossing powder, but you can actually see the change happening. So let's grab my heat tool here, make sure it's plugged in. And it dries super, super quick. The one thing you want to make sure is that your bottles are not in the way of your heat tool, because it will solidify in the bottle. Now typically when you're using a heat tool, especially with your embossing, you have to hold it in the same place for a longer time than with the Foundry Wax. This reaction happens much quicker. But you see how half of it's done and the leafing just came beautifully to the surface. And then quickly do the other half. So, I mean, this particular image, I don't necessarily think I would really have it gilded, but you could do like a 3D image. This has just been painted already. And again, you would use the heat tool on it and brings that leafing to the surface. I probably wouldn't be using it for 3D objects just because I don't really use them very often. But say you have paper flower and you wanted a little bit of accents on the edges, you can just take your flower. You could use a brush to brush it on. I'm just going to tap it into this here just because we have it here. And it dries, I mean, I want to say 5 to 10 seconds and it's dry. And there we go. It's dry and it's got some beautiful silver leafing around the edge. I just realized I forgot to do this one. Now the thing I like about using your fingers is you can get it heavier in some places and lighter in others. So it's got a little bit more of an organic look to it when you do it that way. Let me pull up my little die cut here and we'll use this as an example. I'll show you how I put that guy together. Now before we do that, I'm going to clean this one up. I'm going to use a different colored Foundry Wax. So I'm going to clean it up with isopropyl alcohol. Simply spray. Now I wouldn't normally waste that much. I would use it on things and then move on to my next color. This brush here, I can wait for it to dry in there and then it just ends up being like powder. I usually flick it into my garbage can so that the powder doesn't go into the air. So which one should I use? I'm gonna use Mind. It's got a bit of a copper look to it. And I'm going to use it in 2 different ways. So first I'm going to use my finger and rub it around the edges. And then I'm going to put a little bit of isopropyl in it to thin it out. And then I'm going to dot it. So squeeze a bit on the surface. And when you first take it out of the the bottle, it's really quite thin. But as you smear it onto your surface, it starts to get a little bit thicker and creamier. So I'm going to put it on all 3 sections of my little bird here. Need a little bit more. And by using your finger, you get some areas that are thicker and some areas that are thinner, which personally I really like. I think I like the look of it. The other thing is some areas you're going to get a lot of leafing to and some you're just going to get a little bit of that copper color. Clean my finger off. And then I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to use a die pick to hold my die cuts down. Well, it's already done. It happens super quick. All right, so I'm going to glue these together super quick, and then I am going to add some isopropyl and flick some little spots on there because this particular bird looks really sweet with some dots on it. And then add its little wing. Oh, already have the lid off. There we go. Now this is probably all dried up, so I'm just going to squeeze a tiny bit out on my surface. Mist it with some isopropyl. Now I probably have a little bit of silver left in here. I'm just going to roll it out. It's going to be dry. I just don't want to necessarily mix it up. And I ended up mixing it up, but that's okay. So I tend to be a little bit aggressive with the brush, flicking it so that I get some nice dots. Whoops. But it just adds some really pretty texture to that bird there. Now let's heat it up. I'm not sure how well that reaction shows on camera, but it's got some beautiful dots in there that really make that bird pop. Let's put my brushes to the side here. Now I've got a piece of mixed media cardstock that I have used in my 3D embossing folder. And for this one, I think I'm going to use the gilded. Let's clean this up first. The other thing I have done before is, because one of them I squeezed out way too much. So I have done a few where I just dipped it right in there and then used the heat gun to bring it to the surface. This is just a game tile, so you can use it that way as well. So it's great that with one product and just using different tools, you can get different looks. So like I said before, when you're using your finger, it's a little bit more of a heavy hand, especially at the beginning when it's quite wet and liquidy. It gets a little bit more subtle as it gets dried out on your fingers. But especially for these 3D embossing folders, it's a great way to just highlight the detail of them. And then typically I would go around the edges too. I'm not going to go around all the edges just because I don't want to squeeze out more of that particular one. But then once it's dry, let's bring it to the heat gun. When you look at it closer, like it all has a gold highlight to it, but there's just some areas that are thicker that end up having more of the leafing look to it, which I absolutely love. Now, the other thing that I like to do with this is use a collage brush, and you end up getting something a little bit more subtle, but again, just as beautiful. So I've got this woven one that just came out. I just got it yesterday. So I'm going to do that one. I haven't actually done this one yet myself. I just want to see what it looks like. So this one is the statue. This one I tend to end up squeezing too much out. This is actually my favorite one. I'm not a fan of yellow, so the really gold looking ones are never my favorite. But this one has got a little bit, and it's almost like it's a combination of all three of them. It's got a little bit of the copper, a little bit of the silver, and then gold, but not a yellow gold. Oh, I don't want that one. I want this one. But you see how using the collage brush, because it's a nice flat brush, it just highlights the ends. And it's just a really subtle but beautiful look to it. It just highlights all of the texture in those embossing folders. Now, obviously, if I put more on my brush and had a heavier hand, I'd get more of that leafing there. can do it as much or as little as you want. But here's some projects that I've worked on. And I'm going to do all of these as individual YouTube videos. And as they are published, I will post links to them down in the description below so that you can watch them as individual ones. I don't want to do this as one big long video because then it would take forever. So this one here is using some color sprays as well as the sterling Foundry Wax, and some of it is rubbed on or put on with my finger, and some of it I put on with a brush just to get some heavier areas on top of the flowers. This one here is another one. This is with embossing folders as well as die cuts, and I did it in 2 different colors just because I always like seeing how the same design looks in different colors. This one here is the technique that I did with this little birdie here. So it's around the edges of the die cut as well as the spots on it, and then I also use that same color on the background. Once again, same design in 2 different Foundry Wax colors. The sprays are the same colors for the different pieces, but obviously because they're sprays and you can only have so much control, the backgrounds look a little bit different. This one here, I sponged it into a stencil and then used my heat gun to bring the leafing to the surface. So super simple way to make a beautiful, elegant card, just using the Foundry Wax stencil and heat gun. And then this is that same folder here. So this is how I did it. So I did it exactly the same as here with my finger, but I also wanted a little bit more of a subtle kind of a weave texture in the background, and some of them you can see a little bit more than others. So once I was finished with my finger, I went back with the collage brush and just did it both ways, just so it kind of looked like a little bit of a weave behind there. And then this one here, just simply rubbing it all with my fingers. It's one of those things that once you start trying, you have to try it with all of your embossing folders and all of your things. And the worst part about the Foundry Wax is resisting putting it on everything. So this one was totally inspired by a Tim Holtz video where he did watercoloring on this embossing folder, and then I did some Foundry Wax on it. It might be for the same video from him. He might have done the Foundry Wax on it. I don't actually remember. I just am the type of person that if I see a technique I like, I have to try it, and it actually makes me remember it a little bit better. So, and then I tried my hand at some mixed media projects. So I have the Foundry Wax just around the edges just to highlight it. These splats in here are actually Pinata Brass alcohol ink, but they blend beautifully with, or they coordinate beautifully with the statue Foundry Wax. So they look really lovely together. And then I did some other mixed media tiles with alcohol inks on an actual ceramic tile. And then obviously the Foundry Wax is all around the edges. These little drips here are all Foundry Wax as well. And then I did that one in both the statue as well as the sterling. So the same design for both of them, but just one has more of a gold tone to it, one has more of a silver tone, and then the only other thing that's changed is the verse that was stamped and embossed in there. But as you can see, I mean, those drips just look like liquid silver dripping down them. So really quite beautiful. You definitely need this in your craft supply. It's a kind of a game changer for how you can use the tools that you already have. And like I said, the biggest challenge with this is not using it on everything. Definitely need some of your own. So if you haven't already invested in it, you definitely should. It's awesome. I can't say enough great things about it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said, those projects that I've made are going to be future YouTube videos. If you want notifications about them, hit the subscribe button and hit the notifications button so you'll be notified when they're posted. Have a great day.